All right, greetings everyone, welcome to ADV Japan. So today I'm going to be doing another install in video, and as you can see on the right, we're going to be putting in a fender, a high fender on the KTM 390 over here. So we'll be removing that low fender and replacing it with this Polisport Daytona high fender. That said, this is going to be a DIY install. So I'm gonna hack this and make it work. So if you're not good with tools, if you're not good with DIY stuff, then I do not recommend doing this. If you are and you have some confidence, then all it's gonna take is one trip to the hardware store to pick up a few extra parts. I think it cost me maybe an extra $10, and you can make this work. And I think overall it was about maybe 60 bucks total, which is way cheaper than that Tusk kit. You know, I'm not dogging on that kit. It's great, it's awesome, it works, it's designed perfectly for the KTM 390 Adventure. But you know, I'm living in Japan, and right now the yen is super weak against the dollar, and shipping here is just crazy insane. So I almost end up paying more for shipping than I do for the actual product in many cases. So if you're in a similar situation to me, or you're the budget type, this works. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the tools you're gonna need for this install. You're gonna need a size 5 and a size 4 Allen wrench. You're gonna need a size 10 socket with the socket wrench, and maybe perhaps the extension, I'm not quite sure, we may not need that. And then you're gonna need a size 10, just a wrench there. We may not need that either. You're going to need a tape measure, because I'm going to give you some measurements for the holes that you need to drill in the mounting plate, as well as in the fender itself. You're going to need a file, possibly, maybe, or if you have a piece of metal, probably it's going to be quicker to use a hacksaw to cut the right length. And then to make the drill holes, you're going to need a good impact driver with a nice bit that can drill through metal or aluminum. And then finally, you're going to need some sandpaper, because we're going to be cutting up that old fender like the Tusk kit, and putting that back on to protect the suspension. Okay, so some of the parts you're going to need here. Obviously, you're going to need a Daytona Polisport high fender. This is from their SM line. This is going to come with this little plate here that you're going to need to as well, and we're going to be modifying this fender a little bit. As you can see, I already did. I'll be talking about what I did to modify that a little bit later. Once you have a fender, then you're going to need the mounting hardware, and the mounting hardware you're going to have to get from your local general hardware store. So I just went with a piece of aluminum, just because it's rust resistant, and it's extremely light too as well, and it's very strong against bending. So you can get a solid plate if you need, or you can get something with holes. I had some pre-drilled holes in here, and I had to adjust them a little bit. As you can see, I'll be talking about those adjustments and those measurements later as well too. Okay, so the way that this is going to work is the mount will be secured in the back here using these 2 screws down here, and you're going to need 4 washers for this whole assembly in the back here. You have a washer on top, and then a washer on the back here, and then the nut will screw on there. And the kind of nuts that I got are the ones that have these kind of, I don't know, serrated edges there. And the reason I did that is just it's going to lock it in there really, really nice. I'll be using some Loctite anyways, because I don't want this thing to come loose. So that'll be the back end, and that's going to secure this red plate to this fender. And then from there, we're going to be securing the mounting plate, which is right here, and that'll be secured using these 2 front bolts. These are a little bit longer. In any case, that's going to go on top, and then next we'll have some washers. You'll have a rubber washer that'll go in between there, so it'll kind of reduce some of the vibration. And then on the back side, put another washer on, and then you'll have those serrated nuts that I've got. So once you have that, it should look something like this. You know, you'll have basically this mounting plate on here. It'll be secured back here and secured up here as well too. And then this will get mounted into the bike using these bolts right here, these long bolts. And this is kind of a wicked looking crazy assembly that I've got going here, but it's pretty simple. It's not too hard. This is going to slide into the hole that's on the actual bike, and then once this is on, it'll get mounted into here as such, down here, and then this nut here is going to go on the back side, and it'll get Loctited down so none of this moves. And the fender stays in very, very well in place. It doesn't hardly move at all. So, okay, so let's get into it. I'm gonna show you guys where to mount this on the KTM 390 Adventure. Okay, so I'm here at the KTM 390 Adventure, and I'm gonna show you exactly where this is gonna get mounted. Now, some of you guys may not have this little hole in here with this pre-drilled hole in there. And that's because you might have this cover that's over it. And I was lucky enough to see that one of mine actually did not have this cover on it, and that's how I discovered these little holes were here. And I popped this out and I noticed, okay, great, I got two on both sides, so I can definitely mount this whole assembly to here. So you've got a pre-drilled hole right there, and there's a pre-drilled hole on this side as well too. So yeah, it's totally works. Again, like, you may have to pull this little rubber grommet out to reveal those little holes there. So we'll be mounting the entire assembly to those 2 points right there. Okay, so first thing is first, we need to get our measurements on how wide this area down here is, so that we can cut the mounting plate properly. And I believe it's about 14.5. Yep. 14.5 is probably going to do it. So we need to make sure that our mounting plate here is going to be 14.5 wide. And so I've got aluminum, so I can just use a nice little grinder here and get this ground down. Now, I noticed that it is a lot easier to grind this down when it's actually on the fender. So we're going to go ahead and attach this to this assembly to the fender, and then we're going to grind it down. Okay, so you need to make sure that this mounting plate is sitting far back enough so that when you put this top aluminum mounting plate on, that we've got enough room on the back side here to put in our nuts and screw them around. Because if it's way up here, as you can see, you're not going to be able to get your nuts in there. They won't actually screw down. So you need to make sure that this is low enough that you've got enough clearance in there to get your nut in there and to be able to screw it down really nice. Now, in order to do that, I actually had to drill this out a little bit. And so the holes that you want here are going to be, okay, so on center here, looks like you're going to need to drill your holes at about 5.5 centimeters. Again, I'm going to leave the inches, the standard system for you guys up in the left-hand corner. I'm just using a metric tape measure here. So 5.5 on 5.5 on center for your holes there. And I just use this to go ahead and go in here and drill this out. You do not have to drill this piece out. It's got adjustments right here, so you just move this slide up. It's got little teeth on the back end here, so once you get it in place, it's not going to move at all. So just make sure that you've got it all the way down there. Okay, I think that's going to work. So let's go ahead and get these bottom bolts in here first. So starting with the washer. Okay, so the back screws are on. This plate is pretty darn good secure. Let's go ahead and get the front mounting plate on here, and then we'll be ready to shave this down. Okay, just making sure that you got the order correct here. So we've got the washer, then we got the rubber washer that goes between, just to prevent some vibration between the this aluminum mounting plate and the actual fender itself. All right, now on the back side, let's go ahead and put the washer in the nut. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and secure this down. Okay, so that's basically it. This is our mounting plate, and this is what's going to actually get attached to the KTM 390 and those holes that I just showed you. All right, so now we can go ahead and shave these down to the correct spec. And as I mentioned, it needs to be 14.5 centimeters in length, and that'll give it just enough room so it won't be scraping up against the suspension, the fork arms there. And it'll slide right in there really nice, and it won't, it won't move too much. So there's a little bit of play, but not a whole lot. All right, so let's go ahead and get this ground down. Okay, so let's see what we got. Good, 14.5, perfect. Let's go ahead and see if this slides and fits on there. I'll show you how it looks. Like a glove. Okay, so it's sitting right in there, and it's sitting right in there. That's about how much play I have. I'd say about 1 millimeter. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the mounting bolts in place, which are here. Okay, so before we get these mounting bolts in, it makes it a lot easier to remove these little side flange things here. I don't know the proper terminology, sorry, I'm not a bike mechanic. So we're gonna remove these, and it'll open up the space down there, and be able to get those bolts in much easier. Great, okay, now we can go ahead and do the bolt assembly. Now, I've already got this washer sitting in both of these here. I just threw them in there, left them in there. So there's one on this side and one on that side. So this will just slide in. And then on the back side, we'll use these smaller washers. Again, this is an M6 size, and I believe this is about 50 centimeters, or millimeters. Okay, so this just gets slide right down inside here. And it helps when you're working on each side to just turn the handlebars towards you so you can get this in. Good, now let's take a look down here so you can see these are the two mounting bolts that I just put in. They're kind of hanging loose right there. And to prevent this from loosening up and having all that play there, that's why I have these little metal sleeves. So these metal sleeves are going to slide right up in there. But first we're going to put a washer on, because you need a washer to provide a little bit of extra space. And then once I put this nut on the other side, it's going to sit flush with this whole thing, so that when we put our mounting plate in, it should get it should sit flush with that. Now you're going to want to put this going reverse this way, because you want the plate to lay against this serrated edge so it doesn't move out. Okay, got this in there. Now we're going to tighten these down using the wrench here, Allen wrench, and our little combination wrench here. So again, twisting it towards us, and get this really tight. You do not want this loosening up, otherwise your fender's going to come loose. All right, and the Loctite in there should keep everything in place. Now, the other thing I forgot to mention here is you may notice that there's the brake cable here is missing its little mount. You have to remove this, unfortunately. And to be honest, like, removing this thing, to me, it really didn't make a big difference in terms of this cord being like loose. When I'm finished with this whole thing, I'm just gonna take a piece of zip tie and just zip tie it to the fork here, and I think it'll be just fine. And it makes it a little bit harder to get in here because you've got a little extra, you've got less room to work with here. So the needle nose might come in handy here. We can get our needle nose in here and kind of stop this nut from spinning. Once it gets to a certain tightness, you won't need anything. It'll just kind of tighten in on itself. Okay, those are solid. They are in there very, very tight. So now we've got a very solid flat surface to mount this whole assembly to. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how this fits in. Okay, so that is in. And now it's just a matter of getting these tightened down to secure everything in place. So you can see just right inside there, that's how this is sitting in there. Just like that. Okay guys, so I ended up taking this off because it was just way too tight in there. So what I did is I drilled these holes right around this area so that, you know, when I put those those nuts on, I'll be able to screw them around. There's enough play in there. It doesn't look ugly, but you're not going to see it when this thing is on. So. Okay, so I apologize. The video actually stopped recording and I didn't know it. So the next step, you're going to be taking off the OEM fender from the KTM 390. That'll be done with 3 bolts on each side, so 6 total. Once you have that off, go ahead and tape the fender kind of where you want, put some masking tape where you want to cut it. And then that way you can just kind of draw a line where you would like to cut it. And the shape is pretty much any shape that you'd like to do. I think the shape I cut it to is pretty close to what the Tusk Fender Kit looks like. Anyways, it's pretty much up to you how you want to cut this part of the fender. So once you've cut that down, you go ahead and get some sandpaper out. You can use a file too as well, and just clean up the edges a little bit. And that's it. And then go ahead and put it back on with the reflectors or without the reflectors. I ended up putting the reflectors on just because in Japan, I think you have to have those in order to pass inspection. Okay guys, so the last thing that you need to do here is, again, zip tie the brake cable to the chassis. And you can see this is kind of where I'm doing it. In any case, this is very close to where it was previously. It was being kind of hooked in behind the steering column here. And I'm just gonna strap it right down here. So that should work just fine. Okay, so I secured the cable in 2 different places. You've got a zip tie right here, securing it to the frame, and then a zip tie here, securing it to one of the forks, which are the 2 places where the previous mount basically secured these cables. So we should be good to go. Okay, you guys, this is it, the finished product. So looking pretty good. It's definitely on there really tight. All right, there she is. If you guys have any questions about the install, definitely leave some comments below. This is ADV Japan, out.